My name is Richard Alexander Dionne. Currently, I am an instructor at Keanu College, and I instruct the welding apprenticeship program for Alberta. Art has been a consistent mainstay throughout my entire life. Even as a child, I don't recall a time where I was not creative, and all through my life, creativity is a very important component. I kind of live my life by this philosophy that if you don't create, you are consuming. So I need to create something every day. It's not just visual art. I write, I photograph. As long as I'm making something, you know. Even lately, in the later part of my life here, I've been working more metal now, and I think that's attributed to my metal work as an instructor and as a tradesman. And so that creativity now is starting to lend itself into more metal work with blacksmithing and bladesmithing and metal sculpture and things like that. So my mediums change as I progress through my life, but creativity is a daily thing. Yeah. The logo itself, historically, I believe, I'm not quite sure the exact time, but it was in like the late 90s. So there was a cohort and a friend of mine, Grant Golosky, who was very active in the association at that time. And I had done some logos for different corporations and companies at that time, and he knew about my creative bent, I guess, if you can call it anything. So he informed me that there was this open competition for the association, that they wanted to develop a logo at that time. So I decided, yeah, I will give it a shot. And it took some development. The final image was not what it started out to be. It was over time, 5 to 6 different sketches, and adapting and changing at that time. And then I submitted. I submitted without any, I didn't have any expectations, and ultimately it was chosen. Well, essentially, in terms of the design, I needed something to encompass what I had planned. So I needed basically a border, right? I chose that iconic symbol of the sun because I think it's very pertinent and relative to a lot of indigenous and primitive cultures. The sun has been, well, where would we be without it, right? So that gave me something to work with. That was the initial border, right? And I made it very distinct as an indigenous symbol. Right? So yeah, that was the first part, and then I had to fill it in after that. I decided to work in 2 hemispheres, a left and a right. Okay. On the left side, in that hemisphere, I decided to put a distinctly indigenous face. Okay. I kind of struggled with that because initially the first one was very masculine. Second one was too feminine. So I tried to work that face into something that was, I hate to say it, but a little more androgynous, where it was accepted on either side, but still very distinctly an indigenous face. Why one hemisphere, one half? Because us as a society, Métis society, we are distinctly half indigenous, and then whatever European roots after that. So I think that sort of worked as well. And then I had to work on the other side. Yeah, the second half of that graphic, that one gave me some issues with the initial design. So my first intent was to represent history, okay? The history of the Métis Nation. And the only way I could really do it graphically is in layers. So, of course, the first image, the first layer, is half of a cartwheel. I took that from that iconic symbol of the Red River cart, and the Métis migration through Rupert's Land in early Canada. Second to that, and just behind that, is a mesh of gears. That is to represent the industrial age and that transition of that period within Canada, because the Métis people, even here within Fort McMurray, with the oil industry and the oil sands, we played a good part into that industrial age and that transition from earlier times, right? And we still do. Right? And lastly, just behind that, and the last backdrop of that last layer, is actually a schematic of a digital circuit. So that brings everything up to date, and that brings us to the current times and within our digital and technological times. So I've kind of had that transition through all those ages and bring it to a current phase. So that's the representation of those three different layers. It's a representation of history and time. The logo today, it's more of a simplified form of what it initially started out to be. Again, I had to flesh it out over a series of sketches to what I thought I wanted to submit. And then after my submission was done, I was, again, quite surprised that it was actually accepted.